Housekeeping?
Yep, do that for you now, Chair. One moment. Good evening, all. Thank you very much for joining us at the Healthy Living and Scrutiny and Social Care Scrutiny Committee. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Please could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking. If a participant wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up by using the raise hand function? And please could you ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to grab the attention of your chair this evening, Councillor Janice Charles, or myself, Amy Rudman, the Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then please could they let either Councillor Charles or myself know. And if you have a webcam, could you please try turning this off in the first instance, because this may help with broadband or Wi-Fi bandwidth. So at least you can be heard until we're able to re-establish your connection. Thank you, Chair. That concludes the housekeeping.
Thank you very much, Amy. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all, and appreciate your attendance. Agenda item number 1 is part 1.2, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, Amy?
Yes, Chair. Apologies have been received from Councillor Collins and from Councillor Payne.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2 then, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of October 2022. Is everybody happy with that, or would you like me to move it on block, page by page or on block?
Move the minutes.
Thank you, Neil. Do I have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest, including whipping declarations. Note, members seeking advice on this item are asked to contact the monitoring officer at least 48 hours before the meeting. Do we have any whipping declarations? None? No, thank you. Moving on to agenda item.
Sorry,
Susan
Chair.
Selby's got
I have my hand
interest.
up. Declaration of interest, dispensation to speak on matters relating to care packages and telecare.
Oh, thank you, Susan. Sorry, I missed your hand. Agenda item 4 is the report of the Director of Social Services, Vale Valleys and Cardiff Adoption Collaborative Annual Report. I felt that this report overall gives the position that we're in, and the key message is not enough, and funding does come for this every year. Would you like to take us through it, Lance?
I will ask Angela Harris if that's okay to talk us through. I'm sure Angela, who's a very experienced manager in this field, will canter us through the document and let us know what the report is saying. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I'm Angela Harris. I'm the Regional Manager for Vale Valleys and Cardiff Adoption Collaborative. This is the 7th annual report for the collaborative to Scrutiny, and it's the first of the round of the Scrutiny reportings. We are required under the legal agreement to report to all 4 Scrutiny committees within the collaborative. This report actually covers an 18-month period from the 1st of April of last year to the first 6 months of this reporting year, and that is actually to satisfy the requirement to provide an annual report, but also in terms of the changes to the regulations which govern our service in terms of having to report on a 6-monthly basis about the quality of our care. So it serves 2 purposes. For those members who may not have been present previously, BBC is one of 5 regional collaboratives in Wales which form the National Adoption Service. along with 3 voluntary adoption agencies. We are the largest. We cover obviously the Vale, Cardiff, Merthyr and RCT. So we've got the biggest, we are the largest geographically and the largest workload. Obviously the Vale is the host, and all staff are employed by the Vale within the collaborative. Our governance structure is by way of a joint committee, which meets twice a year, and a new joint committee was established in May of this year. And the committee has the function of obviously approving our plans and approving our budget. Underneath that is a management board, which is currently chaired by Lance, and comprises of heads of service from the 4 authorities, representatives from education, health and the voluntary sector. And underneath that, then there's an operational group which actually meets to agree some operational matters across the region. The report has followed really the similar format to previous years. I've provided some information on the overall development of the service, the governance structure, the changes really that have happened sort of, you know, in terms of service development. And then I've gone into some detail about under each of the service functions. In terms of family finding, recruitment and assessment and adoption support, and also a section on the adoption panel and other matters. So it's, and the appendices to the report actually provide some good detailed performance data by local authority. So that's the overall sort of framework for the report. Obviously, this report partly covers the service within the pandemic. So it's partly that, and then the remainder of this reporting period obviously was seen that the service entering in sort of the recovery period. Our office has largely remained closed during this period, although we have some staff, business support staff and other staff going into the office for certain functions. But the majority of staff are working virtually or obviously on a face-to-face basis with families and children where that's required. As I said, the governance structures remained largely the same, and it is a structure that is actually quite unique in Wales and is one that is actually favoured by the National Adoption Service. In terms of having a joint committee to actually provide overall governance. So we are, and that's been in place since 2015 when we were established. Obviously we work in the region and across the region, but we actually are also accountable to the National Adoption Service, who are ultimately accountable to Welsh Government. So there is quite a full national agenda that we are also governed by, and certainly we've got a very big performance management framework, and those performance measures have increased year on year since we've been established. So we now report on something like 73 performance measures every quarter. And those, we've got a new raft of measures coming into force now for this quarter. So it's quite a highly regulated service, and also highly performance is monitored very closely, as I said, regionally and nationally. So that is the sort of context and the sort of backdrop and the to the service. We've developed into quite a large service since we were established, and we've almost got currently about 49 staff. So we have definitely developed, and obviously this year we've seen some new positions, some new unqualified positions being created as a result of a cost pressures exercise last year. Those posts are being used to actually increase the range of support services that we can provide to families. I think in terms of our overall performance, I think this year we've seen quite, we've maintained a healthy level of performance, bearing in mind that we had just come out of a pandemic and the restrictions that imposed upon our work. And during the last year, I mean, we were successful in placing 85 children for adoption, which was obviously an increase on the first year of the pandemic. But that is quite a significant number given the constraints. We were also successful in placing quite a significant number of those children within our region, which obviously is of benefit to those children. And obviously, alongside that, we are recruiting a large number of doctors. So obviously, it's of benefit to those families as well. We're monitored very closely on the number of children that we have waiting at any time, and the numbers certainly that wait longer than 6 months for a placement. And I think overall we've managed to see a decrease in those areas. So actually children are being placed more quickly. We are one region that actually oversees the process from the initial referral for adoption from the local authority right through to the making of the adoption order. And I think there's only one other region that actually does that. So that is actually, quite a considerable amount of workload for us in terms of actually progressing those referrals right through the court process. In terms of overall sort of improvements in terms of the family side, we had some new posts given to us in 2019. So we've seen one of those posts deals with life journey work, improvements to life journey work, and the local authorities also benefited from life journey work practitioner posts. So those are with our coordinator and the posts in the local authorities, we've seen quite a drastic improvement in the area of life journey work for children being placed for adoption. And similarly, we've got as a result of the grant funded posts that we had a transition worker. So again, that's been a great benefit for us in terms of actually working with those children to enable them to be successfully placed and integrated within their new family. In terms of recruitment and assessment, so I mean that's just a general overview in terms of the family finding activity. But as I said, the report does go into quite a lot of detail and provides quite a lot of data in terms of actual figures in terms of performance. In terms of recruitment and assessment, I suppose that is our other big area of certainly activity. And I think the report, we've gone into quite a lot of detail about how we marketed our service. We were successful in getting a marketing officer back in 2017, and that post has really been invaluable to us. Obviously, during the pandemic, we relied largely on virtual means, social media means of marketing. But we've now, during the last 6 months, actually opened up and participated in some face-to-face marketing opportunities. Last year, we saw quite a significant number of inquiries received, but we have actually noticed a dip in inquiries from prospective adopters in this first 6 months. And we're now trying to actually track those inquiries and trying to understand the reasons why there's been a decrease. Obviously, we have got the economic situation, etc., which I think is now beginning to have some impact on the numbers coming forward for adoption. I mean, we're not too alarmed by that at the moment because we have got a significant number of adopters who still remain waiting for placements. So, but it is an area that we will need to monitor. I mean, obviously, in terms of the recruitment and assessment process, it is quite a detailed process. Obviously, we take the inquiry, we invite applicants to an information evening, and then they go on to, if they want to pursue their application, then they go on, they're provided with training, and all that is before we've actually taken their registration of interest to start the process. New regulations came into force last year, which require us to actually complete assessments within 6 months. So the first stage is 2 months and the second stage is 4 months. So that is quite tight. And as those we work into those assessments, by the end of this reporting period, we will be able to monitor more closely how much we're able to comply with that reporting and assessment timescales. In terms of adoption support, probably this has been for the last couple of years, this is our biggest growth area. There has been a huge national thrust, national improvement agenda coming out of National Adoption Service to improve adoption support services for families. It is now obviously the right of any adoptive family to actually request support, obviously beyond the adoption order, and you know, certainly that is built into all our processes now, and that is, you know, obviously we've seen that we've had a big increase in workload. There's been some evidence that that is stabilising. We saw a big increase during the pandemic. It is beginning to stabilise, but the demand has had a knock-on effect over the last couple of years, and it does mean that we still have a waiting list for those services, which we are obviously trying to reduce. The team are quite inventive in trying alternative ways of supporting families and providing additional training, etc. And obviously we've benefited again from some national initiatives, the TESSA programme, which is facilitated by Adoption UK. We have a worker to support that programme. Similarly, Adoption UK have developed a service for children and young people who are adopted called Connected, a worker that supports that. So there are a lot of opportunities, but there are also a lot of expectations really upon this area of the service. And another big area obviously is adopted adults coming back to us for access to their birth records and birth records counselling, families seeking intermediary support to trace adopted children. So that is another area that we've seen an increase. In terms of a service, we don't manage an adoption support budget. So where a child requires an adoption support package, we to provide an adoption support plan and assessment, we have to present that to the respective local authority whose responsibility, previous responsibility for that child. So that is an area that has developed. There's some information in the papers and in terms of funding that and the numbers of children involved. That is certainly an area that we've been looking at within management board and the operational group, is to actually how best to meet those demands. The service or the region has benefited from the development of the NFIS psychological service, which covers Cardiff and the Vale. And during this period, RCT and Merthyr have joined with the health board there to develop a MAP service. So the process now is our requests and referrals for funding are being presented initially to those forums. So hopefully children can secure the best support. In terms of the adoption panel, there's small amount of information about that. I mean, that still is a big area of activity for us. It's one joint panel we operate across the region, which meets 4 times a month. Again, quite a high caseload. We've managed during this period to recruit some new independent members, and we're obviously trying to recruit social work representatives from across the region. To acknowledge that is sometimes a challenge for staff in terms of other responsibilities. But the panel is a big area of obviously activity for us. In terms of other things such as complaints, etc., unfortunately we're having I'm afraid to say, but we had a low level of complaints this period, and they were the 2 complaints that were received were both resolved at stage 1. We've developed, since we've established a range of points in the process where we seek views of recipients of our service. So we've developed a range of questionnaires to seek those that feedback. And I think but the challenge is obviously to try and always turn that into a proper framework and utilise that information to actually improve services. So that is sort of probably work in progress for us. Okay, so I suppose to summarise, I think, in terms of the overall performance in this period, I think at the end of the period is we've maintained a healthy level of performance in terms of children placed, children less than waiting, significant pool of adopters, etc. Obviously, we've seen a slight downturn in children in the last 6 months due to some reduction in the making of placement orders. So this is something we need to obviously carefully monitor. And similarly with inquiries from adopters, we need to monitor that very closely. In terms, probably our biggest challenge going forward is around the whole area of adoption support. I touched on the some of the matters coming out from the National Adoption Service. In 2019, they developed a series of good practice guides to cover the range of services, which establish a good practice framework, really, which we need to try and adhere to. But a lot of that good practice does have impact on resource, and there are resource implications in terms of being able to fully meet those requirements. And alongside that, NAS have actually developed a strategic plan which incorporates a lot of the elements of the good practice guides in terms of service improvement, and that plan is now in place till 2025. Again, as a service, we've had to look at the expectations of that plan, impact that would have upon the way we can deliver services. So that is again an ongoing piece of work in terms of trying to meet some of those challenges. I mean, I can go on and I can
Thank you very much, Angela. It's a good report and a very detailed presentation.
Thank you.
This report is actually for approval and noting. Has anybody got any questions that they'd like to put to Angela? No, I think you covered most everything in your presentation. Neil?
Councillor Cave had a hand up first.
Oh, I can't. She's not. Oh, I got you. Hi, Christine. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to begin by thanking you for a very detailed report. Obviously, the work that you do cannot be, as a team, cannot be underestimated. And I have actually anecdotally received some very favourable reports about your pre-adoption training. and I can't tell you how much praise was awarded for that training. And somebody actually said maybe everybody that has a child should receive that training. So yeah, you should be rightly proud of the work that you do. And I know what a magnificent thing it can be to adopt a child. You know what a major impact for the positive it can have on somebody's life, both that of the child and the adoptive parents. I do have a few questions, not many. First of all, I wanted to ask you about in the report, item 6.8. You talk about the decline. There's been a little bit of a decline, and I wondered if, you know, obviously you provide some possibilities there, but I wonder what other possibilities you're looking at, because I do wonder. Obviously, one of the ways you say 50% of a prospective adoptees come via website, but I do actually wonder how much of an impact COVID has had on not having face-to-face contact with people, because adoption, I'm sure, for the majority of people, isn't something that they see you. They pick up a leaflet and they jump into. It's something that they give possibly years of consideration before they put themselves forward. So I do wonder if some of this decline that you're noticing now is a direct impact of COVID and how you haven't been able to have that face-to-face contact.
Yeah, and perhaps I should clarify. A lot of our initial meetings are actually done virtually, but we do now carry out face-to-face visits, and throughout the pandemic all our assessments were done partly virtually and face-to-face, because we established very early on that you can't actually talk to people about adoption through a computer.
No. I'm really referring.
That was built in very, obviously it was all very risk assessed, but that was built in very, very early on in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Really. But I think we have, I mean, even though we had the pandemic last year, we did have quite a significant number of inquiries still from the highest in Wales. But it's this last year we actually, so I think you're possibly right. It is a result of, I think we are thinking the economic situation is actually beginning to have an impact.
Because I was thinking about, you know, where I've seen your stands up in the past, and obviously those face-to-face events, they just didn't take place during COVID.
No,
I do wonder how quickly you've been able to get because even now, not everything, you know, not even the council meeting face to face. So, you know, there is a lack of face to face contact there.
We have started this year. We did the Vale show, and we had a presence in the Eisteddfod. We went to Cardiff Pride. You know, various events, if we can, you know, because it's all about raising the profile and raising awareness, really.
Absolutely.
So we are looking at opportunities really all the time to, you know, to do that really. So yeah, and I think it's something, I mean, it's something NAS are monitoring. I mean, we certainly haven't seen a decrease that other areas have seen. You know, we're still very, you know, fortunate in this area in being able to produce a high number of sort of quality adopters really, but it's something we're going to have to monitor really. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the feedback on the training. We've had that. It's interesting that people, a lot of the aspects are basic parenting that we cover, which is
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Angela. I'm going to bring Rachel in, then Neil, then Susan.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say, Councillor Cave, that interestingly, in the first year of the pandemic, so we saw an increase. So what we think was happening then is people were spending more time together. More time to slow things down, have a conversation, think about what they wanted by way of family life, and we saw an increase. And then in the year subsequent to that, so last year, I think there was something about potential reality kicking in, and that's where the cost of living and fuel crisis, etc., come into our thought process. I think with fostering and adoption, it isn't about the number of inquiries you have. It's about the number of adopters or foster carers that you convert, through a successful assessment and then approval. So the challenge for us is obviously getting a number of inquiries, but really it's about the quality of those inquiries, if that makes sense, to ensure that what you get are adopters who then can go on to successfully adopt children who need a home. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Neil.
Yeah, I mean, Rachel's partly covered some of the things that I wanted to ask. Firstly, thank you, Angela. It is an interesting report. There is a lot of statistics, but they are necessary and informative. It gives us a good picture of the way that the service is performing, and it's gratifying to read. In terms of recruiting, can I suggest that you circulate the councillors again? And I mean, I know it's happened in the past, but it's never too late to do it again. To ask us to use our social media to spread the message, spread the tone. And I mean, I'm sure most of us would be happy to do exactly that. Questions though, one is sort of dropout rate. I mean, it's a rigorous process, but by necessity, it has to be a rigorous process. You can't just take anyone who says, "Yeah, I'll do it." The checks and so on that need to be done, and the motivations and so on, all need to be interrogated. So I'm wondering kind of what the dropout rate is for that sort of thing. I mean, there's an indication it's about 50% from reading through the report, but I'm just wondering whether it goes further. And the other question before you come in, because you can deal with them all then, and I don't have to come back. The applications for funding for adopter support from the local authorities. I mean, you have to go to them to ask for the money for how quickly are we responding to that? I mean, how is that a quick process, or is it sort of taking months? It's just, it needs to be done quickly because that's crucial to making sure that the adoptions are successful. I'm just wondering whether there are any blocks in the system. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, in terms of the dropout rate, obviously, as Rachel indicated, I mean, obviously we receive a large number of inquiries, but those who go on to actually make an application, significantly lower, really. If people then go on to the application stage, and I think there are some stats in the report, the dropout rate, fortunately, is very low. And that is usually because people realise that once they've gone into the detail of the assessment process, we're talking about just a handful of people really that actually drop out at that stage, and that's usually either their circumstances change, or they realise when they get into the detail of the assessment, there's a lot more to this than they feel that they can go. But it's the from 369 inquiries in a year. All right, we approved 64 adopters in that, so that gives you some indication. And in that process, quite a small number drop out. So that's the dropout. In terms of the process for adoption support, concluding those, obviously I've mentioned that we have had a delay in us being able to pick up those assessments. So there is a delay there. But what we established quite early on in regional working was that there was either a monthly meeting or a monthly exchange with the budget holder in the respective local authority where we could present cases. So the assessment's undertaken, and then the adoption support manager meets with that local authority to discuss the case. We've introduced obviously a new part of that process in terms of referrals going to the MFIS panel and the MAPS panel before that is concluded. But we try and turn things around, and certainly local authorities try and turn that decision making around as quickly as possible, really. But I think it is, because obviously for families we want to try and get the support in as quickly as we can, really. So yeah, I don't know.
Thank you,
Rachel,
Angela. Does that sorry, does that answer your
Anything to
questions,
that?
Neil? Thank you. Susan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Angela, for providing such a comprehensive and easy to read report. It was really clear by the time I got through the report what the service has been doing, how it works, what the challenges are, the successes, the pressures that you're facing. So thank you. That's incredibly helpful. My one question is about placements. So I can see within the report, I think it says 25% of children were placed in England. And obviously I understand that sometimes there are circumstances why it might be better for a child or children to be placed away from the local authority area in which they're born. But just wondering whether or not you have any information about what the balance is, about the main reasons for children being placed outside of area.
Yeah, I mean, this is an area that is certainly we're now having to account for more closely. Obviously, the aim of the National Adoption Service and the aim of all regional collaboratives is to try and maintain children in Wales, and if possible, maintain them in their local area. Alongside that, we have got the adoption register, which is a statutory requirement where we have to register all children requiring placements and all adopters. So we still have to do that, and that does access English resources in terms of adopters. The main reason where children, if we have to go out of there and into England, is because we haven't been able to meet those needs either locally or within Wales. It's often to do with ethnicity of a child, sibling groups, although we are trying, we've had some success in placing sibling groups. Sibling groups, ethnicity, and children with more complex needs often, or there are very few, for risk reasons, need to be placed outside their local area. So yes, we do have a breakdown of those, and it's something that we are monitored on quite closely now, because the aim is to try and place as many children locally as we can, really. But it's due to the particular needs of that child or individual children. Mainly, I would say it's ethnicity really for a lot of the children that we deal with.
So presumably, thank you. That's helpful to understand. So presumably, in terms of the plans around being able to market the opportunity, definitely, then there'll be some targeted work in that direction.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and certainly sibling groups is, NAS work very closely with an advertising company called Cowshed, and Cowshed sort of overall provide the national marketing campaign, and our marketing officer works closely with Cowshed, really. So yes, and they've had a campaign which we've obviously, to actually try and get people to look at older children, children that don't necessarily fit,
Thank you, Angela. Yeah. It's obvious that you're very passionate about the work that goes on in your department, and if you'd like to take back my appreciation and thanks, and I'm sure that goes to the rest of the committee as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can I move the recommendations then, please?
Yeah, we have to note the report and approve it. Is everybody happy with that? Yeah, thank you all very much. Moving on to agenda item 5, which is the draft capital strategy 2023-24 and the initial capital programme proposals 2023-27-28. This went to the Cabinet on the 6th of October. I think I'm right in saying that. And it has come to us now, showing how the council has progressed. It points out the cost pressures because of pay awards, etc. It is a very depressing report, Gemma, so I'm going to hand over to you now. And if anybody has any recommendations, it will be passed over to corporate resources. So over to you, Gemma. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, just to clarify for the recording, on the last item, Councillor Thomas obviously moved. Are you happy to second?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is the capital strategy report. Now, it's a very detailed document, but the key elements that I was going to draw out in this report is around the current capital programme as it stands, and the scale of the capital bids that we've received, and there obviously is a funding gap there in terms of the capital bids. We don't yet know what the settlement will be, although we did have an indicative settlement as part of last year's budget, but we will be waiting additional information from the UK government and then feeding into the Welsh government settlement in late December to finalise those figures. So at the moment, this sets out the capital bids for the committee area and the current funding gap. So the current indicative funding that we received as part of the 22-23 settlement for 23-24 and 24-25 was 200 million across Wales, and of that, some 20 million was ring-fenced for decarbonisation. This strategy sets out the consideration for the use of the Vale of Glamorgan's protected share of the 180 million, which is just short of 7 million, as it's not clear on what basis the 20 million decarbonisation funding will be allocated. We have been updating the 23-24 5-year programme during the current year. So in 23-24 we have just over 107 million gross spend, and over the 5-year programme that's just over 230 million. And that's summarised in the tables under paragraph 2.1 of the report. So, for instance, 23-24 is funded from grants, contributions, reserves, but that does include a significant amount of HRA borrowing. So we've got 47 million unsupported borrowing, 5.2 million of general fund borrowing, and just under 42 million of HRA borrowing, with then a supported borrowing, which is part of our general capital funding allocation from Welsh Government of 4 million. The bids, the additional bids and funding are set out in paragraph 2.24 of the report onwards. So we've got bids of 14.6 million, but that's net of specific grant in section 106. It's expected that some of our Welsh Government capital funding and reserves and capital receipts and the various elements that are available to us would be utilised for rolling asset renewal allocations, for items such as schools, social services, buildings and resurfacing. We do have some pressures within capital, as you'll be aware. We've recently received the results of condition surveys for our properties, and we have an estimated funding gap in terms of asset renewal of 38 million. We need to decarbonise our estate, as you'll be aware, so we've got a target of net zero emissions by 2030. There are inflationary pressures, as we've been reporting in previous capital monitoring reports, and some of those have fed into additional capital bids as part of this process. We need to continue to invest in schools and community learning. We need to implement the waste management strategy, and there are other issues such as flood risk. All of that in a climate where we have increased interest rates, which therefore make it more expensive to borrow to fund schemes in the capital programme. So the bids are detailed in Appendix 3 of the report, and just to draw out the bids that are relevant to this committee. So in terms of neighbourhood services, we have some additional funding that's being requested as part of the Penarth High Level Glazing Scheme, and so that's looking for an additional 200,000 to progress the scheme. And you'll see in the monitoring report later on this agenda that the Penarth High Level Glazing Scheme has been slipped into 23-24 because it can't be progressed without this additional funding. We've also got bids for boilers at Cowbridge and Lantwick leisure centres, and both of those boilers are over 35 years old. There's a bid for a programme of community centre roof renewals. As you'll know, we've got a number of community centres across the Vale. I think it's around 22, and some of those roofs are in quite poor condition. Colcott Sports Centre, so looking for a bid for refurbishment of the changing rooms and renewal of the hall flooring. A bid for Penarth Leisure Centre, refurbishment of reception toilets, and a bid for community centres Wi-Fi to install Wi-Fi with internet access into the 22 community centres. In terms of social services, there's a bid for additional funding for Cartreth Porthcurry residential home. Now, we've had a number of schemes for this property in previous years, because the property is constructed on a landfill site. There's significant ground movement, so there are now issues with the drainage and the rear extension of the property. And these need to be rectified. And also a bid for T Devon residential home for roof renewal. So the recent property condition surveys have identified the need to rectify the roof coverings, and as part of that we will also explore, but at additional cost, whether there's any for instance any solar panels that can be installed as part of that scheme. So as part of this scrutiny process, we're particularly keen for any comments on capital bids, and we will also be taking these bids to service specific budget working groups. We expect to receive the settlement late December 2022, with a view to coming back to corporate performance and resources scrutiny in January 2023 with a draft budget that would then go on to Cabinet, with a view to bringing final proposals towards the end of February in 2023, and bringing them back to Council for the 6th of March, making that 11th of March statutory deadline. It's also proposed that there will be briefings for members around December, January time, as well, around the some of the detail of the budget. So those are the key items that we're going to pick up on the capital strategy, but happy to take any questions on the report.
No, doesn't look like there's any questions. The report is for noting. Is everybody happy to note the report? Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Susan. Moving on to agenda item 6. Thank you, Gemma. It's you again. I mean, I saw quite a bit of slippage, but no major issues. And as you said in the previous report, there are inflationary pressures. And this is the financial strategy for 23-24 and medium-term financial plan. And this went to the Cabinet for approval on the 6th of October as well. Gemma?
Okay. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. So this report looks to update the medium-term financial plan and budget strategy in the context of the current economic position and the significant cost pressures that have been emerging from services, but also corporately we have significant inflationary cost pressures in respect of energy and pay pressures, as well as some specific contract pressures that we are reporting. And I mean, I would say that the cost pressures that are reported in this document are obviously at a moment in time. We've continued to do work on those cost pressures, and some of those cost pressures have been reduced, but a lot of those cost pressures have developed and increased as well. So, but obviously we will continue to work on those cost pressures in the background. So when we had our 22-23 settlement, we had some indicative aggregate external finance, which is the funding that we receive from Welsh Government, increases for 23-24 and 24-25. So that was 3.5% in 23-24 and 2.4% in 24-25. Now, the indications that we've received are that we shouldn't expect an improved settlement for 23-24, and I think we're currently working on a scenario where we would expect a settlement that's less than that 3.5% that we were previously advised. And within the document is included a -1% on that AEF funding for modelling purposes. We're not expecting to receive the settlement until late December, as mentioned. Within our modelling, in terms of funding, we also looked at council tax. We've assumed it would increase by 3.9%, but this is only for planning purposes, and will obviously need to be subject to a policy decision later in the budget process. There is a significant funding gap in 23-24 and across the medium term. The gap for 23-24 in this document is forecast to be 28 million, and there are forecast cost pressures of 38 million. Assuming that we were to receive that 3.5% increase, and with the 3.9% increase in council tax, we're expecting additional funding of 9.9 million. Has to be said, if that AEF funding is flatlined and we don't receive an increase, then the 3.9% increase in council tax relates to 3.4 million increase. The key cost driver in these cost pressures is inflation. So we have inflation within this report of 22 million, a lot of that coming through from pay awards, partly because of the pay award that was over and above the amount that we made provision for in the 22-23 budget, and also picking up a projected pay award then for 23-24. The significant increase in energy costs across the council assets, and increases in contract prices on care and transport contracts. On top of that, we have continued demographic pressures around, for instance, a growing number of pupils with additional learning needs and an ageing population. So some of the things that we hope to consider as part of the medium-term financial plan were to look at how we can deliver the corporate plan and the emerging trends from the annual assessment, ensure that we have as much as possible robust and sustainable finances over a 5-year horizon, and that includes this very detailed review of potential cost pressures, and trying to make sure that going forward we don't have unallocated savings and that pressures are fully recognised. Looking at our reserves, and that's a piece of work that's currently being undertaken to make sure that we have the appropriate level of reserves in the right place that are matched to the risks of the council, looking to maximise council tax as much as possible, but in the context of the cost of living crisis, ensuring that fees and charges are covering the costs of service, evidencing the collective responsibility that we all have for a balanced budget, trying to ensure accessible and transparent finances, and ensure that we deliver value for money by adhering to our financial and contract procedure rules and benchmarking best practice across the sector. In terms of committee specific cost pressures, we have a number of cost pressures in social services that I will just quickly run through. And then in terms of leisure, we have a £250,000 £250,000 cost pressure on the leisure contract, which is associated with the energy costs at the leisure centres. So in terms of the social services cost pressures, in children's services, we have a cost pressure relating to allowances for social care officer, responsible officer, as part of special guardianship and residential orders. We have a cost pressure for some additional capacity in the business support service, and a cost pressure for additional member of staff for social worker for unaccompanied asylum children. And we also have a cost pressure around increased contract prices for children and young people support. In terms of the resource management and safeguarding service, there's a cost pressure around residential homes for additional capacity for a waking night officer, member of staff, and also an activities coordinator, and looking to bring in a children's commissioning role and finance officer within the service. Within adult services, there's a cost pressure around the ageing population, the demographic pressure that we traditionally pick up within the budget, and that has been revisited as part of this process, and it does reflect the kind of increase in ageing population that we're seeing. And we also have an increase here around provider fees and quality assurance, and this is across a number of services, and we've been doing some more work on this area, but at the moment that figure has increased slightly. There's an additional cost pressure, apologies, around management capacity, and then also against the regional integration fund tapering, and that again that cost pressure has been increased based on some additional information that we've had from health, although it might be that the decision needs to be taken that we're not able to fund that tapering. There is a category of growth against these cost pressures that we've used to indicate how much control we have over those cost pressures. So whether the council has a choice about implementing those additional costs, or whether we're already committed to them, or whether they're inflationary costs associated with something that we're already doing. Now, in terms of next steps, it's very similar to the capital strategy. So we're currently talking to scrutiny committees about the cost pressures. We have budget working groups coming up in the next few weeks, where we'll be running through the cost pressures with the cabinet member, the leader, and senior staff from the services. We'll be working towards that settlement date towards the end of December, looking to bring back a draft budget in January, feeding into final proposals at the end of February, and then setting a balanced budget by that council tax deadline of the 11th of March. Happy to take any questions on the cost pressures. We're particularly keen for any comments on the pressures.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gemma. Neil?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, I agree with you. First of all, Gemma, thank you for both reports. They're both very comprehensive, and the detail in them is illuminating. Chair, I agree with you. It is a depressing time. The consequences of the inflationary pressures that we're seeing are profound in terms of what we can and can't do within the local authorities. The fact that we won't know what the budget statement that we're hearing later this month will be, we can't predict that, and therefore we can't understand what the Welsh Government are going to be able to do to support us later in the year. We're talking about potential and hypothetical figures, but we know that within our within this department, within this directorate, most of our spending is statutory based, and most of it is determined by things that we have to do as a local authority under the law, things like childcare, provision for the elderly, and so on. We ain't got a lot of choice in that, and it has to be paid for, it has to be funded, and we're a big spending scrutiny committee or big spending directorate, and you know, maybe we have the similar problem to learning and skills, where which is also the statutory has got a big statutory budget. There isn't a lot we can say on this. There isn't a lot we can quiz on this or suggest on this, I'm sure. It's a shame that some of our cash is having to go to private providers who are profit-making agencies, some in childcare, some in provision for the elderly, where some of them actually look to make profit from us, and that money is then lost, or it goes to their shareholders. In the bad old days, I guess it was, when all the local authorities provided their own provision, their own children's homes, their own homes for the elderly, and so on. There was a difference. It was the money was going direct. It was within the system. There were faults with it, but the money wasn't going out of the system into private pockets, and maybe we should be considering ways in which we can retain more of our cash rather than giving it to people who've already got money. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Lance?
And thank you, Councillor Thomas. I suppose I just wanted to pick up some of what you said, and I suppose just to highlight that part of the report where it's asking for comments to be referred back to Cabinet for consideration. I think you're right that placement costs are a part of our cost pressures, but those providers are required under their registration requirements to be financially okay and make profit, so it's considered to be acceptable. There is a Welsh Government consultation on that in children's services at the moment, so I think we'll have to wait for the outcome of that. But those care providers are having to find additional costs through things like additional heating bills and so on. And one of those providers has written to me today saying that they estimate that is £150 per bed in the residential home that they provide. That's just the increase in the total cost of their heating bills. So just to give you a flavour, just for us to stand still, those cost pressures that we have put forward, I understand are eye-watering, staggering really, but that is the cost of the increase or the impact of the increase in energy prices and in inflation. And I think the other part of those cost pressures that is huge is in relation to domiciliary care, and you'll be aware from previous reports of this committee that this is an area that we are really struggling to provide because we cannot find and entice sufficient staff to do that work. The cost pressures put forward will help us towards some of that by paying those people a better wage than they're currently paid at the moment. So helping us to continue with the real living wage. Understandably, the council is going to struggle to meet that requirement, but I would be surprised if this committee didn't want to provide some support to that back to Cabinet.
Thank you, Lance. Amy, did you get the recommendations? Oh, Amy.
Hello, Janet. Sorry, Councillor, I'm minuting, so sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah. So just to clarify, the report obviously refers to comments to Cabinet, but as you'll recall in our discussion at the Agenda Conference, Chair, we're actually going to refer any comments to Corporate Performance and Resources in the first instance, which then will be subsequently passed on to Cabinet. I just need to clarify the wording of the comment that you actually wish to pass on as a committee. Obviously, Lance has brought our attention to the domiciliary care staffing issues that we have. What exactly is the comment that you wish to pass on?
Can we phrase it in something that we note that this Scrutiny Committee notes the pressures placed on the domiciliary care service in terms of recruitment and the need to enhance our offer to potential employees in order to improve that recruitment, to provide the level of care that we need to be providing. How about that?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with that.
Lance, is that okay? Nod if you think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to lead you politically, but I do think there is the report really sets it out in terms of and I think Gemma's been through our pressures. It would seem strange to me if you didn't respond, whether that's challenging those pressures, saying actually you don't think they're legitimate, or actually endorsing them.
I mean, in my view, they are absolutely legitimate, and I mean, I fully endorse the things that Gemma has raised, and maybe we do need to emphasise that in the way that I've just suggested, if everybody's happy.
Yeah. Okay, are we all happy to approve and note that and pass the recommendations, Susan?
Yeah, and I would just add further to the comment that much of the work that's done in this area is statutory provision. This council has very little choice. about spending money in this area, and we would always want to be prioritising the needs of vulnerable people and people with care and support needs. So we need to make sure that we're able to comply with our statutory duties in this area, and I think that should form part of the response that we make to the report.
Thank you, Susan. And have you got that, Amy?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're all happy to approve the recommendations to pass on the report. Yeah.
Move the recommendations as amended then.
Thank you,
Thank
Neil.
you. And I saw Councillor Ball nodding, so I'll take him a second.
Thank you. Right, moving on to agenda item 7. It seems it's the Gemma show this evening. This is a part of regular updates on developments and is just for noting. Has everybody read the report? Would they like Gemma to proceed with a representation?
Hi, Chair. I mean, I suppose they're just. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, sorry, I was muted. I didn't realise. I was just going to say that this is part of a regular update of developments, and it's for noting, and I presume everybody's read it. So if you'd just like to go through it for us very quickly, Gemma.
I will, yeah, just pull out a couple of key points. So it's just taking the capital programme to the 30th of September. We have had some slippage that's reduced us from the initial sum. As you'll be aware, I mentioned previously, we're experiencing some significant inflationary pressures that's causing the need to renegotiate with contractors, retender, and some project re-engineering. So this report sets out some the progress of schemes, but it also sets out some amendments to the current capital programme, and there's a couple that are relevant to this committee that I'll just quickly cover. So carrying forward the 1.546 million for the Penarth Leisure Centre high level glazing scheme, and that's linked to then a bid for some additional funding as part of the capital bids, and also Murchfield Community Sports Facilities. Whilst we're able to do the preliminary surveys and design work this year, we're expecting to carry out the construction work in spring 2023, and therefore we're carrying 178,000 into next financial year. Happy to take any questions on the report.
Anybody got any questions? No?
No,
okay,
move
that's
the report.
lovely.
It's the regular thing we discussed. I mean, you've had the opportunity to look at both these, all these items in the previous 2 reports as well. They're within that. I'm happy to move the report as is.
Seconded.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cave. I'm afraid you're on mute, Chair.
Janice, you're muted.
I'm going to take my finger off the mouse. A very good news story to end on, I'm very pleased to say, and it is the Telecare Service Update Annual Report from March last year. Andrew Cowell, will you take us through it, please?
Yeah, certainly will. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the committee for your ongoing interest and support of the Telecare service. I've lost count now how many times we brought reports to this committee around Telecare, but I really hope that you find the developments that we've made to the service over the last year and those that are planned for the next year as positive as we do. Telecare is foundational, it's preventative, and we think it's a really effective way of keeping people safe at home, particularly, of course, during this time of increasing demand on health and social care and the cost of living crisis. I want to draw your attention to the review into the service that was undertaken in 2021. It was a hefty old report, so I've picked out the kind of main recommendations, and if it's okay with you, I'll just whiz through them very quickly. So the recommendations were around making preparations for the digital switchover, a consideration of a dedicated falls response service, review of our management structure and support structures within Telecare, have a look and review and improve our stock control processes, modernise the website, and then modernise the hardwired alarms in our designated council housing. So I'll take you through each of those in turn. So as we all know, the switch over to digital telecommunications is already happening and meant to be finalised by 2025. But we are ahead of the curve in terms of our telecare. We're the first telecare service in Wales to go to a fully digital alarm receiving centre. And that really does future-proof our service. It allows us to explore and utilise a whole new range of digital devices that can support people in their own homes, and it opens up a whole world of telehealth potentially, where we can actively monitor people within their own homes, and then send alerts very quickly in real time to next of kins, to GPs. So that's something that we're keen to explore in the next few months and years. And because we are the first in Wales, there are a lot of eyes on us to see how successful it's going to be. So the Welsh Government's digital health programme called Tech Cymru, they're very keen to support us with our digital transition and the growth of telecare and telehealth equipment. So that is a really good news story, and I talked very briefly and very quickly about how we made the transition from the old system to the new one. There were a lot of sleepless nights, let me tell you, but we made it, and we've been live since the 1st of August, and it's been great, and we're only just scraping the potential of the new digital world with our system. So more to come, I hope. The falls response service. So this is something that has been long wanted within the telecare world in the Vale. So we did trial a falls response service in the eastern part of the Vale, with Cardiff Council. So that ran from March to October, and we've now entered a partnership with St John's Ambulance to provide a 24-hour, 365 days a year falls response service for the whole of the Vale. That started on the 1st of October. So just let me give an indication of kind of how busy the team has been since. So it's only been going since the 1st of October. So in that month, we've had 33 call outs, so that's more than one a day. On average, and we're getting better, but on average so far, the responders have taken 38 minutes to get to a person's house. 33 of those minutes have been in the car, and they've stayed with the person on average for 45 minutes. So that's supporting the person, helping them get back into a chair. The St John's Ambulance responders are fully trained in using Manga equipment. So that's specialist lifting equipment that safely lifts people up into a standing position or a sitting position where they can hopefully move to their own chair themselves. Out of those 33 calls, 8 people were injured at the scene. 2 were managed through GP services. 5 attended A&E through ambulance, and 1 person declined any further support. Importantly, though, St John's, because their history, they've done this before. They've got a lot of support structures within St John's themselves. So they have the responders have access to a kind of advice line. So should they be concerned about the person that they're seeing, they've got that support. Also, each call, St John's provide us with a summary of what they've seen. So the circumstances of the person, and that report then is sent straight away to our falls, so the NHS falls support team within our VCRS team for any ongoing therapy and treatment that person might have. So hopefully we can prevent them falling again. So that's great. That's number 2. So the restructure of the team. So you'll be aware of the Wellbeing Matters service. We see telecare as an absolutely integral part of our Wellbeing Matters team based at C1V, and we're working with the team to integrate telecare into that service. And we're beginning to look at things like joint training, shared supervision and support, having joint meetings. So it's bringing the different parts of the team to have a one team feel. Stock control. This is very simply we have recruited a stock control officer, and they're responsible for developing stock control systems linked to our digital platform. So that really ensures that we always have sufficient stock within the system, and that we can start to trial new pieces of kit as they become available. So the website, we're aware that the current telecare website, I don't know if anyone's looked at it recently, but it is outdated. It's accurate, but it is outdated. And we have recently started working with the Vale Comms team to try and improve the content and the design of the website. We really want to see it as an opportunity to attract new customers, but also be a bit more interactive. We're wanting the website for new customers to purchase telecare, and for existing customers to update personal information rather than having to phone the service. So that work is ongoing. So hopefully when we come back in 12 months' time, we'll be telling you that that's all sorted, and we welcoming you to take a look. What's next? Oh, the hardwired scheme. So you'll know that within 33 housing schemes throughout the Vale of Glamorgan, we have hardwired telecare or community alarms within each dwelling. These are the old-fashioned analog units. You'll probably see them. They've all got the orange cord hanging from them, and they're often in inaccessible places. They're just not modern enough for the current residents. And what we're finding is a lot of the current residents are choosing not to use, and therefore not to pay for, the hardwired units. And those that do need a telecare service within that setting, the hardwired units aren't sufficient for them. So we are moving to transition all our hardwired units into our new digital devices. So that will open a whole range of new services for those tenants. And lastly, testing new equipment. So this is something with the new digital platform where we're kind of pushing ahead with new equipment. We had a testing day last week, and we've ordered 100 new units from a company called Chip Tech. Now these are excellent units. They've got kind of a dual SIM system, so that kind of improves coverage of the units, and that's a particular comfort over in the Western Vale, and they allow a wide range of peripherals both inside and outside the person's home, and also updates an app. So a relative could have an app on their phone, and it would automatically give an update about what time the person's got up, or whether they've left the house. So that kind of communication is just improving all the time now. And lastly, we're in the very early stages of planning installation of a range of telehealth devices in the step-down flats at Longmeadow Court in Cowbridge. So hopefully, once we've got them in situ, we can use them to give kind of really useful insights into people's well-being and care needs while they're there. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of the developments that we've seen within the telecare service this year, and hopefully we will continue to do so over the next 12 months. So any questions?
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I just point, just for clarity for the sake of the recording at this point, that obviously Councillor Lloyd Selby has declared a dispensation for this item. Her dispensation is to speak on the matter, therefore she has remained in the meeting as entitled to do so, but a dispensation does not cover her for the vote. So I just wanted to just clarify that with you. So when we do get to the end of the debate, Councillor Lloyd Selby will not be voting on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Well, I was absolutely so delighted when I read this report for all sorts of reasons. And I mean, I myself personally, along with many other people whose parents, etc., at one time needed this service and had to run up and down the road to find somebody to come and help you pick them up because they'd fallen in the house. And to the collaboration with St John's Ambulance, I think it is a really good move. And also the fact now that if somebody falls over, and a lot of them forget to press the button, that you actually pick that up now and somebody is sent automatically. So yeah, thank you very, very much. I'll move the recommendation later, but first Susan would like to say something. Ask a question.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. Andrew, I'm connected with 4 households that have had telecare installed in the last 15 months. And I have to tell you, the whole process right through from the beginning of giving information to older people who needed to understand the system, through to installation, through indeed to having to use the alarm system on a number of occasions, has been fantastic.
Yeah.
The response from staff, the way that they've dealt with older people with different needs, different levels of understanding has been exceptional. One of the people that I'm supporting has had the letter about the enhanced service, the enhanced provision through St John's Ambulance.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be transformational for many people, because for somebody who often falls, to have to lie on the floor and wait perhaps for paramedics for hours to come, you know, that's a hugely difficult situation for somebody to be in that isn't good for their health or well-being. So to have the reassurance of the possibility that somebody could get there within 38 minutes, fantastic. I mean, please, you know, pass my thanks and my commendation back to the staff on the front line who are delivering the service, because I can't fault it. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It was really so thrilling to read. And I have had people who have received their letters, I think the day before yesterday, contact me for me to pass on their thanks as well. So Neil?
Yeah, thank you, Janice. I mean, there's a great report. It's brilliant to hear that the telecare service is moving into the 21st century again, or even further, and that you're keeping up with the technology, you're keeping up with the times, and it's doing so well. And to hear the reports from both Janice and Susan about their personal experiences, and it validates everything that we're doing. And I think, and to learn that we are leading the way, leading the pack, I guess, in Wales over this is gratifying, to say the least. The only question I've got, sorry, is the vulnerability of the system to the potential blackouts that we're being told may be happening over the winter. I mean, it is an area of vulnerability, and I'm wondering how robust and what provision we're making to that. Thank you.
Absolutely, it is a significant concern. Telephone lines now are digital, and therefore are you have to plug it in at the wall, not plug it into the electricity, not just the phone socket, don't you? So they are vulnerable. They do have small batteries. Some of the units have small batteries within them, but it is a concern for all of us.
Thank you, and it's nice to know that you are concerned and you're doing all you can.
Yeah.
Neil?
I was just going to say, so are we making sort of contingency plans to try and support this. Sorry.
Yes. So we're attempting. We're identifying those that are at most at risk at the time. We're hoping the blackouts will all be planned and we'll know that they're going to be happening next Tuesday, so we can make arrangements for those individuals, and for those that have no family or no alternative support, then we'd provide contingency plans for those people. But we're thinking that is a relatively small number in comparison to the totality of telecare customers.
Yeah, but
Thank you, Andrew.
People who suffer from that, if they do have a power cut, the elderly people with maybe confused are more vulnerable to faults in those circumstances, and at the very time when they need the service.
Would you like to come in there, Lance?
Yes, it was just to say, I suppose, that there is a wider piece of work going on with corporate colleagues looking at assessing that risk, not just for telecare users, but across the board for the council. So, and obviously this cohort of people will be part of that risk assessment. So I'm not saying I can solve it and everything's fine, but I can give you some assurance that it is being looked at. The other thing, as I was talking, I just wanted to, I suppose, just let committee members know that telecare was an area that this committee looked at through a task and finish group back years ago. It was incredibly difficult, incredibly complicated, lots of really difficult pricing structures, different types of kit, etc. And it has been a journey, I think, to have got to a position today where we have a full service in place. We have modern equipment coming, and I think that is a massive improvement. And I'd like to thank Andy. I'd also like to thank Suzanne and their colleague Gary Pike, who isn't here, but who really helped with that piece of work, because it is something that was really stuck. So I think it really is good to see it moving. So
excellent, good to hear.
Did you want to come in, Suzanne? No, Lance covered it. Yeah, it was an excellent report and a star in the Vale of Glamorgan's cap, I think. I think you have helped an awful lot of people with the progress that you've made. So thank you very much. So the recommendation is that we have another report in 12 months' time. Is everybody, Neil, you moving that for me? Thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Caris. Thank you all very much for this evening. Agenda item 9 is any items which are charity sided or urgent. I don't have any, I'm pleased to say. Please take care, enjoy the rest of the evening, and thank you all very much indeed for your attendance and input this evening. Paris.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Good night. Thank you, Chair. Good night all.
Good night.
Bye bye.